Now, for those who just joined us, I'd like to welcome you to this Institute of Internal Auditors 60-minute session, Create Your Unique Internal Audit Brand, presented by Shailinda Tanaje. Now, for those who don't know Shailinda, Shailinda is currently Vice President of Internal Audit at Singapore-listed Olam International Limited. He has more than 15 years of experience in internal audit and has worked at Olam since 2002. His areas of specialization include managing global cross-cultural audit teams, anchoring and conducting complex operational audits, operational risk mapping, data analytics and fraud detection, identifying new tools to increase the impact of the internal audit function, as well as improving stakeholder relationships with the internal audit function through active engagement. Mr. Tanaje is a Chartered Accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, holds a Bachelor of Commerce from Delhi University, and sits on the board of Governors Directors for IIA Singapore. Shailinda, I'm about to open up your mic. Hello there.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. Michael, thanks for the introduction. Thank you, IIA Australia, for the opportunity. So we can get started now. Okay.
I've passed control to you.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, Shailinda, yes. Thanks.
Okay. So today's session is about create your unique IF brand. So essentially, creating your unique IF brand is all about, how we kind of create a unique identity for internal audit and empowering internal audit to provide a impactful assurance. So in this session, we are essentially going to look at some of the aspects which internal audit probably should focus upon in order to provide an effective delivery and outcome. So before I go on to the presentation slides, a very quick overview about Olam. That's where I work, and as Michael told you, I'm working as a Vice President in the internal audit function. So Olam, we are an agri-commodity trader. We are a supply chain manager having operations in 65 plus countries, employee base of 20,000 plus, and we are essentially the market leaders in 5 agri-commodity platforms and annual turnover of 20 billion, quite global presence in the commodity sector. So moving on to the presentation, so we are going to be looking at some of these aspects. First and foremost, we start with internal controls, some of the really important concepts that, we should be, careful about and which we should be embedding in our audit approach. Then we move on in terms of, how in internal audit we keep innovation at forefront in terms of ensuring that we are able to renew ourselves as an audit function to ensure that, we are relevant and we stay at top of our game. Then we talk about certain tools and tips on how we can leverage technology, then discuss on some of the components in terms of how we increase stakeholder engagement, then, what are some of the ways and means of influencing behavior. And last but not the least is, we do keep here a lot of feedback from the various stakeholders about this value add. Just wanted to give my own perspective on what it should be and why we should possibly stay away from this. Okay, to start off with, like I said, I want to start off with some of the basic yet very essential components relating to internal controls. So essentially, I'm going to talk about 3 important elements here. So let's look at this. First and foremost is, 3 pillars of effective internal control framework. So the idea of this concept is we are trying to say that if these 3 important elements of internal controls are there, so the possibility of your governance framework to be strong, effective, and robust is highly likely. So let us look at what are these 3 important components are. First and foremost is the corporate culture, which is essentially at the core. And, Peter Drucker said it better than anybody else, that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which essentially, mean that you might have as an organization best of strategies, policies, procedures, but if you don't have the right culture, there will be a scenario sooner or later that things will go wrong. And I mean, it is really saying that we might have essentially all the right things going, but if the culture is not correct, possibly, we'll have problems sooner or later. So I think culture essentially, that is why it is here at the core. followed by the another important component, which is policies and procedures. And when we generally talk about policies and procedures, a lot of us have a habit of rolling our eyes, as in policies and procedures are going to kind of delay the process and make it more bureaucratic. But if these policies and procedures are put effectively, they are one of the strongest ways of risk management. So policies and procedures essentially have to be there in terms of regulating behavior, and like we say, swimming within lanes. So it essentially defines some kind of a boundary conditions. And another important thing with policies and procedures, as an individual working in an organization, it reduces your personal risk. So imagine, as an employee, if you're, doing certain roles, if the policies and procedures are not there, you sometimes are really wondering whether, this is within my purview, whether I have exceeded authority or not. So it is really essential to have the right amount of policies and procedures. As I said, if we have the right amount of policies and procedures, they are one of the effective way of risk management. And the third and another important element is technology. So there is a reason why this technology is at the top. So technology, I think we have to understand that technology is simply an enabler. So today technology has given us the power to really aggregate data on a common platform, which helps us to better analyze the data for a proper decision-making process. So technology is really a data aggregation point, which helps us to really analyze and make our decision better. So in a nutshell, what we are trying to say is these three are really important elements, and which we have to always be cognizant of and take care of. And why I say so, especially what we do as an internal auditor, which I have seen is, and more so on the internal audit planning process, is typically we start our internal audit process by jotting down the list of entities and the business units, geographies, or the processes in our audit universe, and try to do a high, medium, low rating of all those entities for our audit coverage, so for our so-called risk-based audit coverage. But I would say that is not the starting point. Our starting point has to be looking at really these three important components. As an organization, we have to see as an internal audit function where our organization stand in terms of what is the corporate culture, what is the state of policies and procedure, and how is the IT landscape. So essentially, this has to be really our starting point in terms of getting a complete, I would say, a snapshot, a complete handle of where we lie as an organization on these three important components, and essentially then embedding all these important components into our overall internal audit philosophy, into our overall internal audit approach, and then, have that embedded in our audit planning. And also, the idea is, we have to understand that this essentially has to be our starting point as a IA function. We have to have a complete understanding of where we are as an organization on these three important components. So moving on to the next important aspect which I want to talk about here. I don't know how many of you had heard about this concept of broken windows. I can just take you to a bit of history on this. So this concept of broken windows is essentially based on an experiment done by some of the scientists in Harvard back in 1970s. So where, these scientists were reading into the subject of criminology. Essentially, they are trying to see and understand behaviors of criminals to see why they, act in certain ways. So for this, they conducted one experiment, and under which, what they did was they took two abandoned cars, and one of the car they put in a posh area of Palo Alto in California, and another car they put in the suburbs of Bronx near New Jersey. And then they wanted to observe in terms of, what happens to these cars, to these so-called abandoned cars. So the car which was in the suburbs of Bronx, which was slightly an unruly area, day one somebody broke open the window of the car, then they opened the car itself, and everything was taken out of a car, and after day one it was more or less like a playground for small children. So the car was totally in pieces. So then they were observing the other car in Palo Alto, which was a posh area. So they were observing, and nothing happens to that car on day one, day two, day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, nothing happened to the car. So what one of the scientists did is he went with a sledgehammer and he broke the windshield of the car. And they wanted to see, once the windshield is broken, what happens to the car. So then the next day, once the windshield was open, the following day they saw people trying to come near to the car and trying to open the car. Second day, they were successful in opening the car. And the third and the fourth day, the car had met the same state which the car had in the Bronx on day one. Essentially meaning once the window was broken, the whole car was again, in ruins and pieces. So essentially, if you look at this concept in another way, if you see a broken window in a house, and if you see that window being broken and nothing's being done about it for days, months, weeks, so you get a sense that maybe the owner is not serious and there is a lax attitude about the property. And sooner or later, you will have more broken windows in that house, and possibly that behavior gets replicated and you have more broken windows throughout the neighbor, and the whole neighbor has a lot of broken windows. So essentially, how we bring this concept of broken window into business realities is, these broken windows in a business world are nothing but all these small infractions and breaches that of policies, procedures, systems that we see in our day-to-day working life in our businesses, which sometimes, we tend to ignore, saying that these are small issues. But what that does is, it gives a kind of an impression to the, teams in the businesses or to the employees that, these systems and processes are not important, or, the management is not really serious about all of these things. And sooner or later, it compounds into something big. So things won't start big altogether. It is all these small broken windows which join together to make something really big. So essentially, we as an internal auditor, especially, it is our role to ensure that we don't ignore all these broken windows. And especially, why I'm saying this is, because as an internal auditor, we do sometimes get demotivated when some of these smaller issues are not addressed by the management. But I think it is our duty as an internal auditor to make sure that we are getting this message across to the management that these are ultimately the symptoms or like the tip of the iceberg, which might ultimately lead to something really big sooner or later. Another, concept which is related to broken window, which I think is quite relevant here, is like they say in today's world, they say that there is nothing called a black swan event. It is all about gathering clouds, which essentially means that the clouds are gathering all the time and we fail to notice those clouds. And if something go wrong, we say that it is a catastrophic, it is a black swan event. But it essentially was not a black swan event. It was all the gathering of the clouds which we failed to notice, which essentially the same concept of broken windows, that we fail to notice those broken windows, or we fail to notice those gathering clouds, and if something big happens, it is a result of all these small events. So I think this is the concept which I wanted to bring for this forum, was that we as an internal auditor and, as a management, we should always be wary about all these small things, making sure that it doesn't percolate into something really big and serious. Moving on to the third concept, which I wanted to talk about here. It is about changing the systems or processes. And when I talk about systems, it essentially means the IT systems. A lot of us have a tendency to believe that, simply by automating, things will be all right. Simply by automating, we will get the big gains that we are looking for. Everything will be smooth and running. But I think we have to understand that the strength of an automation, and that's why, I go back to the previous slides where I talked about corporate culture, policies, procedures, and IT. That's why IT is at top, because IT is simply an enabler. And IT or an automation could not be better or worse than the underlying processes. So I think we always have to keep it and bear this in our mind that, the strength of an automation or an IT process is not bigger than the strength of your underlying processes. Sometimes we really forget about this concept, and we believe that, simply by automating, things will go right. And that's where we see a lot of automation effort being failure, or, not being working as desired, because the underlying processes were not right. Underlying processes were not strong and robust. And like, I put this beautiful quote by Bill Gates, which says that the first rule of technology is, if you try to automate an efficient process, you increase the efficiency, you magnify the efficiency of that process. But if you try to automate an inefficient process, you magnify the inefficiency, which really underlines what we are talking about. And, it reminds me of a joke where one colleague, he meets one of his colleagues in the office, and he says, okay, I understand you have automated a particular process, so I'm sure you must be doing lesser mistakes now. So he says we continue to do those mistakes, but we are doing them faster. So essentially meaning that we should not ignore the importance of underlining processes. Automation is there, but automation, like I said, is just the enabler. So before I move on to the second section on innovation, a quick recap. So we talked about in the first session these three important elements. First is these three pillars of internal controls, which have to be there to ensure that the governance process is strong, and how those three pillars have to be really a starting point in whatever we do as an internal auditor in our audit approach and philosophy. Then we talked about this concept of broken window and how it is essential. Then, we touched upon, having an importance of a robust process and how an automation could only be as significant and as relevant as the underlying processes. Moving on to the next section on innovation.
Shalinder,
I think it's really important.
Shalinder, sorry to cut across you. Just want to make sure you've caught that question by Tracy, broken windows. Would you consider outdated policies and procedures a broken window?
I think excellent question. Yeah, definitely it is a broken window, because then it also sends a signal that maybe we are not serious about all those policies and procedures, and they may be a piece of paper on the shelf. So essentially it does reflect attitude of a management which is not really very upcoming and forthcoming.
And do you have the chat box there? Do you see that the second question that's come through from Jian?
Yeah, I could see that. Let me just read that.
I'll get you to read it aloud so we can capture it in the recording. Thanks.
Okay, or maybe I can take that question later and move on, because I have a few slides to cover, if that's fine.
Sure. Yep, all good.
Okay, so coming to this next session of innovation, I think it is important to understand that for us as an internal audit function, it is really important that we keep renewing ourselves, like I said in the beginning, in order to ensure that, we are at top of our game and we are relevant. And, when I say innovation, it does not necessarily mean that as an internal audit function, we really need to overhaul ourselves every now and then. Innovation could also mean, all these subtle changes. It could be as simple as, changing a format or bringing a new format and making sure that there is a conscious effort to improve. So in this coming slides, I'm going to talk about some of the relatively unexplored concepts or ideas which could, present an opportunity for a lot of us in internal audit function to really think of some of these areas and see how you could implement some of these in your own audit function. So let's look at them. IA advisory, I don't know how many of you in your internal audit function has advisory as a separate vertical. So when we talk about advisory, a lot of stakeholders view sometimes internal audit as someone, who's always finding mistakes, finding faults and issues. So here we have advisory, which is all about providing solutions to impact the control environment. So in terms of internal audit, performing that role of advisory, here are some of the examples in terms of how internal audit can provide that role of advisory. So, the advisory role, and these are some of the examples typically coming from how we are doing it in OLAM, and I mean, there are many ways and a lot of other things we can do in advisory, but just to give you some of the ideas. So one could be, when we see some areas of common control gaps or lapses or some areas of improvement, we as an internal audit function could, prepare a simple 1 or 2 page of advisory notes, which essentially could give you, a kind of a brief background about the subject and some of the gaps that we see, what are the do's and don'ts, so as to give that kind of a guideline and indication to a larger mass of organization in terms of what is expected on those aspects. Another area where IA could provide their advisory role is in terms of, whenever there is a introduction of a new policy or amendment in a policy, and we do see a lot of feedback coming from the businesses in terms of asking certain clarifications. So there, I think IA could take a more proactive role in their advisory capacity to give some kind of clarifications and addendum notes in terms of ensuring that the policies or some of these aspects in the policies are understood clearly. And one other important area on IA advisory and consulting service could be new system design and improvement. And I must say, this is one area which we as an IA function have in past conveniently shied away on the pretext of conflict of interest. I think a lot of us as an internal auditor believed earlier that, if I as an auditor get involved in a new system design, whether it is IT system or some other systems or processes, if we get involved at the stage of design itself, so tomorrow if I have to audit the same process, my independence get impacted. I must say that all that is old school now. More and more audit functions are realizing that it doesn't make any sense to just sit on the fence and let the system be prepared and you go a year down the line, and when you start eating the cake and then you realize that there are some fault and, trying to raise questions. So more and more audit functions are really, taking that initiative of being upfront and participate as and when the processes are happening and, give their inputs there and then rather than, waiting and, really sitting behind this conflict of interest shield and really not doing anything about it. So I think on the advisory side, I must say it is not that, we as an IA function don't give these kind of inputs, but if you have this advisory as a special vertical, I think it gives it some more bit of structure and, you are able to really bring this component of IA, bring this service of IA more clearly to all the stakeholders. And I think it really opens window, and it is also kind of balancing your role as an internal auditor where you're not only doing your core roles of, your field audits and all other stuff, but at the other time you have this, you have this window of advisory which is clearly structured and articulated as one of the deliverables from your side, and people can approach you in your capacity as an IA advisory function. Moving on. So another component, which we could do in internal audit function is, we could do something called a theme-based project where, as a senior auditor, we do get some sense of some of the common areas or lapses which we see in our businesses, which cut across different BUs, which cut across different geographies, where you clearly see some common thread in terms of common gaps and all. So if you pick some of those things as a part of your internal audit planning process, that, okay, let's pick up during this year, let's pick up these 3 or 4 themes and work on them on a project basis, I think that's where you could add a huge value. And like I said, these kind of projects, they cut across BUs and geographies and business lines. So it is really a high impact area. So I think some of you audit functions who have not been doing this kind of a thing, so doing this kind of theme-based project is something what one should look at. Moving on. Then I want to talk about, 1 or 2 softer aspects which, we should consider as an internal audit function. And one of them is newsletters. So this is one of the softer aspects which internal audit should look at. Okay, I see one question by Meili. Let me complete this segment of innovation and then I take a pause and take all the questions if that's okay. Okay, so in terms of the audit newsletter, you should look at this as a good educational tool promoting culture of compliance, and it does bring a good traction for internal audit, and which makes internal audit services more broad-based, and also it helps in terms of we do get as an audit function feedback from the businesses and the stakeholders that how internal audit is disseminating and sharing best practices across the organization. So I think this again becomes a good tool to share that. So some of you audit functions out there who are not started this process, so you could have something kind of a monthly newsletters are really, I feel it is difficult. So we do something in Olam is like a quarterly newsletter in order to ensure that we provide quality content and make sure that the newsletter is not too bulky. We always try to keep it like a standard 3-page with some images, and also the readability is like within 8 to 10 minutes you could simply finish the article and have some kind of anecdotal story based articles, and not something which is really very bookish, and and it makes sense and it reaches out and people can connect in across various segments. Not only that, it should not only cater to financial or that community, people across the business can read, so it should be in those simple language and terms. And I do see this is also some kind of ice breaking where you have this internal audit newsletter, which I said initially it works like some of our softer aspects from the internal audit. And one of the other related concept to internal audit is IA newsletter or IA portal. Essentially, IA portal, or essentially kind of a IA homepage, which essentially means that you are utilizing your own organization's intranet platform to create a homepage, meaning which you are bringing internal audit to each desk, providing useful inventory of some of the checklists, templates, which people can download. And it really shows internal audit as a good live function who's really up to date and really always reviving, renewing, bringing contents, and bring that kind of a dynamism to the audit process. Moving on. So another concept relating to this kind of softer, I think, component which internal audit should look at is preparing explainer videos. This is something which is recently a lot of IA function are picking up on. It essentially means you prepare, and it does require a professional service. I don't think, unless you have a sophisticated IT function which could prepare these kind of videos, but a lot of outsourcing organizations are performing these kind of, they prepare these kind of videos, which is like a 2 to 3 minute animated videos with characters and voice, which helps to explain from an internal audit standpoint, if I have to tell, which helps to explain, what internal audit does, what is its approach, structure, and how internal audit fits into the whole organization philosophy, and how internal audit helps in achieving the organizational objective. And this is really very, very impactful. Imagine if you have to present about internal audit. I mean, typically, if I take my own case, if I have to present about Olam internal audit function to my stakeholders inside or outside, it is like a 1 hour presentation or more than that. And, there is a limit to the scale. You can't reach everywhere. So you imagine you have this kind of an explainer video, which is very powerful, and at the same time, it cuts across the scale part. It could reach to anybody in the organization. You could simply put it on your intranet website, good educational tool for anybody joining in, anybody in the organization. You simply click, and a video which is self-explanatory. So again, some of the IA functions who haven't really thought about this is something really good and impactful. Like I said, something really new also, because a lot of, within the organization, I don't think there are a lot of businesses who are really preparing these kind of videos to create that kind of impact. I think before I move on to the next few slides, I see a few questions, so maybe I can quickly take 1 or 2 of them right here before the list becomes too big. And I promised Meili. So Meili, you have requested, could you please give an example of theme-based projects? So I think I can give you a quick example is, for example, if you are doing, a review of authorization policy, and you see, there are areas where you see generally that the authorization policies are not well structured or not clearly defined across businesses, or maybe there are certain gaps. One particular business line have authorization policy which is better or worse than the other. So this could be one area. And another thing could be, let's say, for example, where I do see there is a lot of value is in terms of, let's say, your contracts and agreements. This is one area, where you see various businesses within your organization have different level of robustness in terms of how their sales or purchase or the contract with the service providers are prepared, let's say, in terms of the terms and conditions in the contracts administration process, like who's preparing, who's approving, contract cancellation, wash out of contract, who's looking at that. So I think these are some of the examples which you will see that these are common themes which cut across various businesses. And if you see that there are gaps and you do a project-based review, I think that is something which could really be useful. I can take up another question. This is from Max. IA advisory is a great idea that complements business monitoring. That's good. Okay, this is more of what we said. So maybe I can continue, and if I finish well ahead of time, I can open. Besides taking this question in between, we can open the forum for questions again. So moving on, here I wanted to share, some of the trends in the internal audit planning process, and also some of the recent trends in the report writing process. So I think IA planning these days, as I see it, it has become very nimble and flexible, meaning which people are not wasting a lot of time in terms of, preparing audit plans. And it is all about striking a good balance between whether you want to go wide. If I have to give an example, whether I do 50 audits versus 10 audits, I think both are not advisable. 50 would be too much, 10 might be too little, and just trying to unnecessarily go too deep beyond what is mandated. So again, striking a right balance. And another important component which I want to touch upon is IA communication. And if you have to ask me one single area, and I'm sure it resonates with most of you who are listening, one single area where we feel as an internal audit function we need to improve, I would say for me that number one area is always communication. And communication for us as an internal audit function, it is at core of whatever we do, right from issuing the audit reports, talking to the businesses during our audits, discussions with the stakeholders, CEOs, CFOs, discussions with the board audit committees, discussions or presentations about internal audit at various forums. So you look at anything, I think communication is at heart of whatever we do. And I think I must confess that we have to learn a lot about communication from how our counterparts communicate on the business side. So you look at the business teams, they are so effective in communication. I think we have a lot to learn from them in terms of how they communicate and how effectively they are communicating. And I'm sure, a lot of us as an internal auditor, you could, when you look back in some of the good work in terms of good audits that you have done in past, and sometimes you feel that the impact was lacking. So I could say in majority of cases, you are not lacking in effort. I think we are all lacking in communication. We all lacked in terms of really communicating some of the good work that we did. And, sometimes because of that, because of lack of that, the impact goes missing. So in terms of going back to the planning, I think it is very important that we as a IA function should have a separate segment in our audit plan for IA communication. And to do this, I would suggest, we should have a complete list of today as an internal audit function, what are the various communications that I do, and do a good introspection or self-assessment of where we stand as an IA function on those communication channels and whatever communications we do, and have a clearly articulated plan in terms of, how we want to go about it and how we want to improve on that. So I think it is really important that in your internal audit process, in the planning process, you have communication as a separate segment to ensure that it gets the required kind of attention. Then the other component which I wanted to talk about is trends in internal audit report. Again, the trend in internal audit report is going towards, making the audit reports leaner. All of us all the businesses these days, everybody is tied up with their day job, and internal audit beside the function, it is nobody's else day job. So people have their day job, we have to understand. At the same time, we have to understand that whatever work we have done, we are able to get across that work. So the best way to do, we understand, is making sure that you are making the most impactful report in the as summarized fashion as possible. So the trend is within the organization also, people don't want to see what is going right. They simply want audit reports to show what is going wrong and what is being done about that. So clearly, cutting straight to the point, making sure the audit report is summarized. And again, there is a trend of, having different kind of audit reports for different audience group. When I say different audit report, doesn't mean different in terms of the content, but different in terms of the level of summarization. So maybe for the board and the executive, you could have a one-page executive summary. For the other key stakeholders, you could have, let's say, 3 to 5 page summary, and then you could have a complete big report with the, I would say, the business that you have audited, because they would want the full inventory of what you have done, what were the comments. You could still have that, but I think try to think that your audit report touches various stakeholders and what is relevant from them, and maybe designing simple templates for each of those groups. I'm sure it is not more than 2 or 3 different groups that we are talking about here, so it doesn't require really a lot of effort on that. And then there are trends in terms of using audit this COSO scorecard, and also giving description on the root cause of the findings. So root cause of the findings also helps to ensure hitting some of these underlying areas which is resulting in these kind of audit findings. In terms of the COSO scorecard, which I have mentioned here, I want to quickly take you through this particular scorecard which is there on the slide. So, a lot of us do have, we do a rating of the internal audit issues in our audit reports of high, medium, low, but I don't know how many of you are using this kind of a scorecard. And that too, I feel it is important that we should start putting these kind of scorecards as a part of our internal audit reports itself, So like I said, rating of the individual findings, most of us do, but essentially rating the entire business, it is important that we use these kind of visual signals in form of COSO scorecards. And believe me, this kind of a scorecard is very useful and important for stakeholders like the board audit committees and the senior management. So without even looking at the entire audit report, if I simply look at this scorecard, and let's say this scorecard rating is very bad, so without looking at the entire report itself, it gives me a good sense of how the audit report is going to look like. So I think it is important if some of you in your internal audit function have not been using this kind of a scorecard. One is, it is good to start looking at this, how you could incorporate, and it is even better if we put that in the audit report itself, because I think it gives a good synopsis, good snapshot of the entire state of the business. I can just quickly scroll to see if there are any questions coming in. I do see a comment from Shyam Ashokan saying an audit report is also an assurance document. We touch on what is working well in the summary. I tend to say I would agree and disagree at the same time. I think ultimately we have to make sure that, first of all, people read those audit reports and work on that. So for me, if I start to include everything, including what is working well, I always fear as an internal auditor giving those reports to the stakeholder that they might really become too lengthy, and I might miss across some of the important concepts or the areas which I wanted to bring their attention to. So I sometimes do avoid this, and you are right, we do get this feedback sometimes from the businesses that I'm doing 10 good things and you haven't mentioned even a single of those areas. So I think it is about how you are able to message this across in terms of ensuring that we take this as something which is ultimately going to drive improvement. So it is only for everybody's interest that we are presenting in this form, and it is not that we are only after kind of highlighting the businesses for the things that they are doing wrong. But it is ultimately about making sure that whatever we are delivering in form of audit report, it is being actioned upon. So I move on to the next component in the innovation segment. So here, you know, I feel a lot of us in the internal audit function, we do sometimes get, I think we do get entangled in a lot of protocols. And here in this section, what I'm trying to say is, we as an internal auditor, sometimes, like they say, exceptional situations, they demand exceptional actions also at the same time. So I would say, you know, if we in our internal audit, especially, you know, when we are doing field audits or the internal audits on ground, you know, if we come across some of the exceptional scenarios, you know, we should not shy away from cutting all the bureaucracy and report that issue straight away there and then, if we feel that, you know, this is something which is really serious and we want to make the management aware about that, rather than, you know, waiting for the entire, let's say, chronology in terms of issuing the findings, getting the approval for those findings, getting the management comments, and all those 5-6 steps of protocol. I think if those situations, in some of those situations, if it is demanded that, you know, it is really serious, we really have to cut across all those bureaucracies and, you know, escalate and create that sense of panic to make sure that if that action which is required, which is the need of the hour, you know, people look at that immediately. And the other component is IA intervention in terms of making sure that, you know, sometimes, you know, we find a gap, we are able to identify certain process gaps and lapses, and we feel that, you know, our job is done, we have identified, we are not the one who are going to implement that, it is the business side who has to implement. So I think it is really important to understand that the story never ends only by finding those gaps and lapses. I think ultimately, if nothing is being done about that, I think we don't drive any, I think, satisfaction, or, you know, it doesn't help our cause by simply identifying those gaps. So I think we have to really sometimes take command of the situation and make sure that, you know, we are able to push hard in terms of ensuring and forcing control. So we have to do everything that is required and go to the highest escalation level to make sure that whatever we have recommended is really implemented in the right manner. And also at the same time, providing early warning signals. So early warning signals essentially mean, you know, I don't have to, as an internal auditor, really wait for an audit to start to report anything. I think whatever we do as an internal auditor, you know, it is all about our sense on what we are hearing and looking around. I think if you see, you know, there is, if something that comes across your knowledge, which is, you know, needs attention of the management, and which is, you feel that it is really important. So without having the audit started, or without having that really, that process being started, I think you could really cut into that issue straight away and start investigating. I'm sure, you know, it might look as you are breaking the protocol, but as a management, you will largely get a support for even that kind of an action, because it is all about intention. So if our intention is to, you know, you come across some serious issues, you feel that it has to be really escalated there and then, so we have to provide that early warning signal. So all I'm trying to say is, we really do not get need to be trapped within those cliches and all. Sometime, you know, we have to really look beyond that. And like I said, you know, if something wants immediate attention and, you know, action, we have to really break all those protocols and make sure that we are addressing that. So, okay, I can take this question by Tracy. Would you use the scorecard for each audit? I would say depends what is your audit entity. If your audit, what is your audit entity is like a legal entity, if you're auditing at the same time, and if you're doing the full scope audit, it is better to give that scorecard. So I think if you are doing a full scope audit, better to give that scorecard, because then it reflects the state of the entire business. So if you are just doing a segmental audit, just within that entity picking one area or not doing the full scope audit, I would say we should avoid, because then we haven't got the full sense of the operation. So if you're doing a full scale audit and your auditable unit is that entire entity, that means you have looked at all the areas, then it is better to give that kind of a rating. Okay, moving on. So in the innovation segment which we started, I wanted to quickly summarize what all we have talked about here. So we talked about IA advisory. So some of you which haven't really thought about IA advisory as a separate vertical, it is a good opportunity to think on those lines. And then we touched upon some of the examples how IA advisory could work. And we talked about doing some theme-based reviews, issuing audit alerts, planning what are the trends and how we could have communication as a separate segment given the importance of communication. Some of the trends in audit reports, using the COSO rating chart, I think, which is very, very useful. Then look at some of these softer aspects, IA newsletter, IA portal, explainer videos. So essentially, before I move on to the next segment, I think we have to, as a IA function, we have to understand we work in a very dynamic environment. I think our businesses are very dynamic. And if we stay as a function as static, I think there is seriously something wrong. So again, I'm saying we do not need to really overemphasize, but at the same time, we also need to give this component of innovation and bringing newness a good thought and a good articulation. We have to make sure that we really think through on what is new that we can add. And I could share, something which I do with my team, and I find that really effective. I'll tell my team always that, okay, here are a few things that you are currently doing. So in your existing things that you are currently doing, give me 3 ideas of how you can make it better. And also I ask them, besides that, give me 3 ideas on what new things you could do. And believe me, there is so much value to this process, because I think we as an internal auditor sometimes are too occupied in our chronology of, starting, closing, issuing reports, next audit, that we really don't look back and see some of the value improvements that is possible, and especially in the processes that we are currently doing. If you sit back and realize that, simple things like your audit report, or even writing emails, or, summaries and whatever we are doing, I'm sure if you really sit back and realize and think through all of these components, you will easily find some good improvement areas. Okay, so moving on to the next segment, leveraging technology. I guess, needless to say, we are living in a technological world. So here, we don't have a choice. So we have to embrace technology and embrace IT. So for me, like I said in the beginning, technology, it helps us to aggregate data. Technology helps us to enhance capacity. We have to understand, technology gives us the power to do more with less. So it is a really good tool to enhance capacity. It gives us the power to do more with less. And technology also helps us to provide a better quality of assurance because of better insights we have through use of technology. So here I'm going to share some of the ways where I feel that, IA function, we should leverage technology, some of the areas where we could use technology to really make our job more efficient. Automated work papers, data mining or data analytics, control monitoring, communication and feedback, training and educating. So I'm sure, automated work papers and also data mining or data analytics is something which a lot of us as a IA function might be already be using, and wherever we are on that curve. But a lot of IA functions have already started on this automated work paper. There are, tools off the shelf which are available. Data mining, data analytics tools are there. But I'm going to talk about the other 2 components, which is continuous control monitoring. So in a continuous control monitoring, it is essentially like a, simple process where more on the lines of SOX controls, where you defined with each businesses what are their critical controls. So for example, if you have 20 business units, so with each of those business units, you could have a simple discussion of define what are your, let's say, top 15 or 20 controls, and define these cycles on which periodicity those controls are done, performed, or monitored. And once you have those controls defined, and taking and maybe just preparing automated tool where every quarter or every month, there is a self-assessment done by the business units on how they have performed on those controls. For example, whether it is those controls have been done, not done, completed, in progress, completed with exception, various status. And when you get those kind of status from all those 10 or 20 entities, you get a full enterprise-wide view of how the controls are performed. So like they say, it is not only important to see that the controls are working, it is also important to be able to demonstrate that controls are working. So I think this is a really good tool where you are able to really demonstrate whether the controls are working or not. So some of the audit functions who are not using this kind of a tool, I think we should not hide behind budgets and the kind of effort. So it is all about having these kind of ideas and thoughts in your mind, and there are various main ways and means of really achieving these kind of outcomes. It is just that we really need to articulate and think through and kind of personalize how it works in your own environment. I can quickly take this question from Jian. Is it possible to share some of the automated work papers? I think some of the most commonly used automated work papers are like Teammate is something which is globally being used by mid to a large size audit organizations. When I remember some long time back, I used to use something called Audit Leverage. I don't know whether that software is still there or not. But if you refer to, Jian, if you refer to the IIA website, and I think in their IIA journal also, I see at least once in a year they have this 3-4 pages where they write all of these about all of these processes and who are the vendors or the service providers. There are product providers like Pentena, and I think there are hosts of them. So if you Google also, I'm sure you are going to get that. And I think there are 4 or 5 which are like kind of market leaders, so you won't go wrong in selection of them. Okay, so moving on, the other aspect which I wanted to talk about in leveraging technologies, training and learning. And I think this is one area where I see there is a huge learning and a huge opportunity for us as an IA function. And training and learning essentially means educating the businesses, educating the organization on importance of internal controls. So, we could develop a simple e-learning tool, and e-learning tool could take a form of, some content, proprietary content that you prepare, which you feel is something important which the businesses should know from internal control point of view. And in that e-learning module, you could prepare some kind of questions and some quiz and all, and maybe at the end of module, the person who is doing that module, he has to submit in a kind of a Q&A, and you do a rating to ensure how well he has understood. So this is quite useful, let's say, for somebody new who joins this, and another 2-3 months down after his orientation, somebody could take this kind of modules to make sure that they have learned all of these important concepts. And it is very important because it really goes on the lines of root cause analysis, because when we go on audit, we sometimes do come across these kind of feedback that the process owner, they were not really aware about these policies, procedures, or process. So this is something I think a lot of IA functions are not looking at. Here is a huge value in this. Again, it could take form of e-learning modules. If you don't have a budget, I think you could simply write 8-10 page literature content on a Word file, prepare some questions, hand it over to the HR department saying that, okay, once you get it approved, that, okay, this is the template you want any new joinee to fill in, and when they fail, let us have the feedback. So again, simple thing, but a huge value. And at the same time, something related is you could prepare something called an audit toolkit, which is essentially, if you have a newsletter, it could contain, it could be toolkit, could be like a PDF document, 6-7 page document. It could have few articles, newsletter about your IA function. And, make it nicely in kind of a colored formats and all, so that visual appeal is always there. And when we are going on field audits, you could give it to the businesses that this is it, this is all they need to know about IA function, and also you could keep it with the HR and have this kind of a 5-6 page document given to anybody who joins in new. So I think we have to really look at this. Is, I feel, one of the most unexplored areas where there is a lot of potential and opportunity for IA function. So I see Jessica Coop about avoiding the value add trap. Okay, I'm coming to those slides. Okay, then the other component is increasing engagement. I think, again, needless to say, it is important for internal audit function to have a good level of engagement, especially the senior management, to make sure that, they understand the role of internal audit, and also we understand from them in terms of what they are trying to achieve, what are the business objectives, and also at the same time we assure that all our efforts are aligned towards achieving those business objectives. But at the same time, I think when I say increasing engagement, we have to understand that as internal auditors, we should not be bending too much in terms of increasing that engagement, meaning which, as much as this is internal audit need to engage with the senior management should also show that kind of, I think, seriousness and maturity to engage with the internal audit function. So here I'm going to quickly touch upon some of the aspects of some of the tools and tips on increasing the engagement. Like I said, presentation about internal audit, wherever you get a forum, I think you should push yourself in terms of, okay, I want to, for example, if there is a business meet, all the business teams are meeting, you can discuss with the business team head that, okay, I want a 30-minute slot where I want to present about internal audit. Post on your intranet website, if you have an internet website, if there is any new thing about internal audit, new approach, just put a post there, just to make sure that you are always there in news. People are talking about internal audit. So that's the overall, concept of having that engagement. Informal lunch meetings are very, very useful, especially at the higher levels, where you get a very candid feedback and which you don't feel too bad about it during the lunch meetings. If it is given in a formal setup, I think we do take it sometimes personally. So these kind of informal lunch meetings are really, really useful. Elevator speeches, I think this word I take from Richard Chambers, who I feel is the guru of modern day internal audit, who happens to be the CEO of Internal Audit, Institute of Internal Audit. So this, one of his articles, he talks about elevator speeches and importance of that, in the sense that, if you meet somebody in the lobby, I think we should be really quick to share one or two good lines about internal audit. So if you meet a colleague, he asks you, okay, what's happening in the internal audit? What are you doing these days? We should not come with some of those boring lines that, I'm doing this audit, I found those issues. I think we should be ready with some really one or two good lines which people get excited about, what is new we are doing, or, something fascinating. So I think it is important to have these kind of movements ready and make sure that we make full use of that. Sharing audit trends with the businesses is something we should look at. And the other concept is, which I want to talk about, is promoters and detractors. I think this is something which you should look at, and this is something which I feel is very, very important, is promoters and detractors. I think we should make a list of, in internal audit function, that within the senior management, who you feel are the promoters who are talking positively and who understand internal audit, and also the detractors who are always, talking not negatively, but they're not very positive about internal audit. And then try to make a deliberate effort that how you make all of these detractors convert to promoters. Then try to make this kind of, effort to make sure how you move the promoters or detractors to promoters, and make sure at the same time the promoter stays on the promoter side.
Shailendra,
okay,
sorry, just to interrupt. Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt you for a moment, Shailendra. So we are over the hour, so if you do need to go, thank you for attending today's session. Don't forget there is a feedback form that does pop open. Shailendra, you think you've got about another 5 minutes worth of chatting?
Sure, I can try to finish in next 5 to 7 minutes.
5 to 7 minutes. So if you'd like to stay on, the webinar will continue for another 5 to 7 minutes, just to let you know. And also, there's been a lot of questions that have come through, Shailendra. What would be the best way? We could create a Q&A document after the session. Would you like to do that?
Okay, I can do that and I can provide them quick answers, sure.
With answers. All right, because I've been making a copy of the questions that have been coming through, and I'll send that through to you. So there's a few people heading off, so thanks for joining us. Don't forget that feedback form, do fill it in, it'd be great. And also I will be sending a copy, a PDF version of the slides so that you'll be able to sort of reference it afterwards as well. So Shalinda, if you'd like to continue, and just to let everyone know, we're going to be going up around about 2:10 now, thanks.
Thank you, Michael, and sorry for extending this. I'll try to finish this in the next 5 minutes. Influencing behavior essentially means that this is like closing the loop. Whatever we do in internal audit, ultimately it has to lead in terms of influencing behavior of the stakeholders where they are more compliant to systems and processes. So these are some of the ways and means in how we ensure we influence behavior. We talked about communication, the importance of that. I'll touch upon two other components, is demeriting, which goes on the principle of, example setting. You could have a process where, at the end of each audit, you can rate how the business owners performed on controls and give them a rating of 1 to 5, where 5 is excellent and 1 is weak, and give those ratings to the HR and make sure where the processes were really weak, that their incentives are impacted, promotions are impacted, to set that kind of a behavior. Another important concept in demeriting would be, if you have an escalation policy, it is very important that as a higher function we have an escalation policy which really lists down how you are going to escalate. So which makes it easier for everybody to understand what kind of a behavior is expected, and it makes our job also easier where we know that we are going as per the escalation policy if we are escalating a matter, and it becomes more impersonal in that sense. So it is not a person to person escalating something, it becomes more impersonal and you are talking as per the policy. I can leave this building relationship essentially meaning that we have to ensure as an audit function, we don't see everything as an audit issue. We have to have an honesty of discussion. We are not supposed to be making friends all the time, but I think we have to ensure that whenever we are going into discussion, we go with a positive intent. We should not go into the discussions from the point of view of trying to find faults in the process. I think we have to always keep a very clean and a fair state of mind. The idea has to be always go and understand the processes. I think with that, I think we should be able to have a better relationship. So I think lastly, this is the important concept which I would request your attention on this value add trap. I seriously used to get very perplexed when on a lot of these forums people would talk about what more internal audit can do to add value, and what more internal audit is doing. Okay, you are doing these things, but what more you are doing to add value. So for me, I don't understand all these kind of questions. See, we have to understand that the core role of internal audit is and will always be to give assurance. So which in itself is the biggest value add. And if you are able to give that assurance, for example, if I am the CEO and if I am able to get this assurance from the head of internal audit that my internal controls are in place and working fine, I think this is the biggest value add I want from him. So I think as long as we are able to give that assurance, I think this is the biggest value add. And imagine, in larger organizations, multiple geographies, multiple business lines, it is not easy to give that kind of an assurance. It is an ever-going quest to give that assurance. I don't think anything beyond we can give than providing that assurance. And if still, people ask you about what more you can do to add value, I feel there are only two things about this. One is they have not understood the role of internal audit, or maybe we as an internal auditor have failed to convey the role that we are supposed to perform, or the other thing could also be that we have failed in our role as a assurance provider. We are not doing a quality job of providing assurance, and they are wondering, okay, you can't do this, what more you can do. Or if I have to give you a simple analogy of, imagine a pilot of a plane. His core role is to make sure that the flight takes off and lands properly and safely. So what else value add you are expecting from a pilot? We are not expecting him to come on the aisle and perform some dance moves, So equally applies for us, we have a core role of assurance. And I think we have to ensure that anything and everything that we do has to be related to that core. we should not get distracted by this term of value add. We have to ensure that we are always sticking to that core rule of assurance. And lastly, I think this is what I feel and what is our philosophy of internal audit, freedom with fences. And this is a term, which a long time back I read an article from, and this was the article by head of internal audit in Harley Davidson. And he used this term of freedom with fences, which essentially we believe in Olam, we live by this term in terms of giving freedom to the businesses to operate. At the same time, telling them that there are these fences within which they have to operate, and these are the fences of policies, systems, procedures. And it is our role of internal auditor to make sure that we make those fences visible and make sure that the businesses do not cross those fences. I think this is it about the presentation. I am sorry it got late by 10 minutes. If there are certain questions, Michael, you want me to spend next 4 or 5 minutes, I can do that. Or if you want to send me the questions offline, I could do that as well.
Thanks for that, Shailinda. And just looking at the list of questions, there are a lot of questions. So I might send it to you as a document. So I'll get you to review the questions, and just in a time when you can perhaps respond to the questions offline and then come back to me. Thanks everyone for really a wonderful interactive session today. Lots of questions came through, lots of thanks coming through now, so thank you very much for that. I'll capture those questions at the end as well. Shailinda, thank you for presenting today. It was really great to have you here. It's great to get your insight. And also thanks for everyone for attending today's session. It did go a little bit over. There is a feedback form that pops up when we close this session down. Please take the time to fill that in. Great feedback for Shailinda and great feedback for the Institute of Internal Auditors as well. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat box. Okay, so I will send a copy or PDF version of the slides. They will come out, and also I'll send the Q&A document as well as that comes through. Thanks again, everyone. Certainly look forward to seeing you in future IIA webinars. Until then, enjoy the rest of the week. Thanks a lot.